All right. Hello and welcome everybody to the anime show that I cannot name properly. With me here to this season is Yuki.
Hi, Yukikaze.
Right. And we are here to go over all of the newest anime from the previous winter season of 2025. Just a little heads up. These are not reoccurring seasons or ongoing series or spinoff of previous series. These are all entirely new shows, with the exception being reboots from the original source material of a show, rebooting it for a modern audience. We have seen a couple of these over our previous seasons, such as Rama, as well as a Gundam. All right, Gundam gets a weird pass because it's not part of an ongoing canon and it does do original series. So things like that will also be counted. But everything here is brand new. If you started it this season, you are starting from the beginning. And
That
with
is
that, we have
correct.
our rank system.
Yes. So way up at the top at S tier, we have shows that are indispensable that will leave a lasting impact on the anime community, or that are in some way considered kind of a true masterpiece and have maybe like elevated the art form itself in some manner. This is a coveted rank. It is difficult to achieve. It is not entirely uncommon for there to be no shows whatsoever that achieve this rank in a given season. Very, very good seasons, we might see 2 or 3 of these at best. Below that, we have A rank. A rank is shows that are of high quality, but are not quite in the S tier. Things that are very enjoyable, very well crafted, very well done, but not necessarily a complete masterpiece, or that may not really have quite enough staying power for people to continue talking about them and caring about them too much past the current season. Shows that are in S or A rank will probably be something that even someone who is not an enjoyer of that genre would be advised to watch. Below that, we have B rank. B rank is still a decent quality series, but the sort of thing that's maybe just not quite good enough to be watched much by someone outside of a fan of that genre. Further down, we have C rank. C rank is, as one might expect, very mid anime. This is stuff that's just very average, and it probably is not going to be enjoyable at all to someone outside of its given fan base. Below that, we have the trash tier. It should be noted that trash is not necessarily bad. We enjoy trash here. We are connoisseurs of trash. And there are many shows that can be considered trash, but may still have a lot of redeeming qualities. Nonetheless, if the show meets certain criteria in terms of its content, and or at times is, kinda janky, it will tend to make it into the trash tier. Shows that have a huge focus on things like fan service tend to end up in this category. And down below that, we have Skip. Skip is primarily intended to be used for anime that we ourselves could not bring ourselves to watch, especially to completion, or especially, I should say, much of it at all. But we will also occasionally put anime there that we recommend to our audience that you skip. If we are recommending to you that you skip something, that is a show that we are considering to be irredeemably bad, even as a hate watch, within even the context of its own genre niche audience.
If you've made it into the skip, you have failed to meet basic expectations of an audience that has limited time to watch you. This
Or
category, dude.
you were just way outside our own zones and we were not able to find the time to take a crack at it.
I feel like there might be a couple extra with that in there this season.
I feel like there's a few that kind of it will end up in there on both grounds.
Yeah. Okay, and with the general explanation and everyone ready, we have a smorgasbord of actual garbage. Blech.
Yes, the hot trash is especially hot and trashy this season, and particularly abundant.
Oh dear God, it is. All right, Yuki, you are handling our trailers for tonight. What do we have up on the first one here?
We are leading off with honey lemon soda. Skipped me
Not
into a different
yet.
preview.
Yep. Uh, okay, I know. I think this was on my side of the list to watch.
Which
Like
is
after we
shocking
did our
because it's a
opening,
relationship anime.
there we were trying to divvy a couple of these up because I know there's one on here too that you just watched an episode of and you were just like, no, I hate this character.
Yeah, I still actually I think ended up completing that one, but if it's the one I'm thinking of. Anyway,
Yeah. Um, I forgot I had this on my list. Honestly, I keep I watched the opening bits of this for our pre-review, and it just faded into the back of my mind every time. I could not remember this. I also did not watch past this, and even on my like last minute scramble of like, oh, let's try to power through a couple things. I still forgot about this. This show came off as so. Oh, what's the romance genre called again?
well, I'd say this is like shoujo romance.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a shoujo romance with a blonde pretty boy who likes lemon soda and a kind of dweeby girl who's not really it's expressive. I'm trying to. I'm a little piece. It's like you've seen these before. You know what this boilerplate. But it's it's a very box standard show. I don't want to put it into skip, but okay.
yeah,
Go if you
I
want to say
made it to
something.
about episode 5 of this, and like I'm in kind of the same boat, right? Like animation wise, hypothetically, it could almost reach like a B tier. Um, but a lot of the shots are just so like static that that kind of drops it down a little bit for me. The other thing about it is partly because of that. It just feels so slow and incredibly boring. And that's partly because, as you said, it's kind of very boilerplate and has nothing really fresh to it. But it's also the pacing of the show itself. So I think, like, from an objective standard, this is kind of a C. But even as someone who watches this type of show, I found myself extremely disinterested in it and shying away from it every time that I saw it on my list, even when I was out of other stuff to watch. So it's definitely somewhere between a C and a skip for me.
I want to throw this in. It's like I know I have my bias, which let's finish this, and we forgot to go over our general tastes. I will make a list of things to start on with this and go through it one season. Um, but just if you have nothing else to watch and you want to watch a shojo pretty looking um very basic and rudimentary high school love drama story.
Yeah. I feel like there was one other aspect to it that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, which was the like white knighting that was going on in the show. Um it just I don't know, it doesn't feel right for the era that we live in anymore.
This if I honestly I agree with you. This feels like the not the shojo, but that early 2000 Kyuchi like just deluge of anime we got back then.
Yeah, it honestly kind of feels almost like it came right out of that era as like a very forgettable show from that era. Um, yeah, like I'm tempted to call this a C just based on the fact that we really don't have any competition, like direct competition for this show this season, but like
There were far better romances in this season. Like
there
even that
have been,
weren't.
yeah. And not not shoujo romances necessarily, but yeah, I don't know. I'm okay with keeping it in skip, I think. I can't really,
Yeah.
in good conscience, recommend this to anyone.
Yep. But okay, a little quick side note before we move on, because we did forget to introduce our biggest taste. I am Agent Q over here. Hello. And my general specialties are your shonen, your mecha, your ultra macho man, high action octane, as well as my sci-fi dramas.
Also covering sports for us, typically.
Yeah, I do have a weird loving for sports. I don't know why, but for some odd reason, I just like the competition. My
The
weaknesses
spirit of
generally,
competition calls to you.
you're not wrong. I just love a little good solid PvP. I don't go over the top with stuff, but I do like a good challenge. My general weaknesses are your romance, your shoujo, your slice of life feels like my biggest dry spot. Modern day, especially.
Whereas I'm very much heavy on like the fantasy genre. I'll dip into things like space and mechs a little bit. Shonen, it really kind of depends on the show for me. Um, and my side of things that I cover also tends to be pretty heavy into the romance and slice of life categories because I do usually watch those pretty frequently. Um, Also, both of us will definitely cover the ecchi genres and the various hot trash stuff.
Yes, we happen to be slightly horny co-hosts. Although, one little side note, I tend to cover the villainess shows somehow.
Yeah, that does happen.
Yeah, it's a weird though. It's like I like the fantasy trash villainess. You seem to bounce off of them very hardly.
For the most part, this season, and it looks like this coming season, might be weird exceptions.
Yeah, they are expanding on it, but all right. Moving on to what we have on next. What is on the list, Yuki?
Next up, we have I'm getting married to a girl I hate in class. We don't need to know where in the airs, I don't think.
Yep. All right. Yuki did the majority of the cover of this. I did watch a couple of this, and I bounced off of this so hard. I hate this main love interest character.
Yeah, I seem to recall that she was definitely kind of your antagonist this season.
I okay, the yandere I hate you, but I really like you, so I'm going to be extra mean to you trope. I think liked it when I was younger, but as I get older, look at relationships more. I hate that with such a fervent passion nowadays that putting that kind of character in a show irks me in such a horrible way that I could not get over that with this.
So I will say that, in my personal opinion, this female lead was, for the most part, kind of trash. Um, I don't mean that in the trash tier sense of the tier list, but in the sense of she herself as a person was kind of garbage and kind of one of the least one of the worst aspects of the show, okay? So I'll certainly agree with you there. She is not my most hated female protagonist this season by a wide margin, however.
Yeah, I've
um,
got a good feeling on who that is, but yep.
yeah. Uh, I will say for this show, the supporting cast of other girls in the harem were much, much better. Uh, in fact, Shisei, for those who are interested in that kind of thing, is probably the best Emoto character of the season by a wide margin. Um, she's pretty excellent in that regard.
I can't think of too
However,
many others, though.
hmm?
'Cause I can't think of too many others, but I think you covered more of the slice of lifey stuff this season than I could get to.
Yeah, it is true that it was kind of not a very Emoto heavy season. For whatever reason. But there was another Emoto character in this show, and she was better than that one. That said, um, the best aspect of this show turned out to be the relationship between the blonde-haired girl and the female lead, and how that played out near the end of the season. Their arc with each other was surprisingly good. Um, they took a very
Sorry, can I take
yeah,
a wild guess? Because I only, like I said, I think I watched the first two on this, maybe three. She's secretly in love with the main character, and after the main female lead finally realizes through her own thick skull and yandere-ness, she's also in love, and they have a big heart-to-heart about that in competition, correct?
more or less, but it actually comes out that the blonde girl is into the main character well before she realizes her own feelings. But and like after the blonde girl openly makes moves on him a bunch of times, she finally kind of gets it together. They do have their heart to heart. It's a decently well done interaction, but it focuses a little bit more on the aspect of their friendship and them remaining friends through it than it does the competition and rivalry aspect of it, which made it stand out a little bit to me. Um, but yeah, overall, this show it's probably C tier, trash tier, something in that area. Um,
Like
it's
I'm gonna have to defer to you on this one just because I can tell my bias is very heavy here.
yeah. I'm gonna say it's not quite a horny enough show to go into the trash tier.
All right, we have our first C this time. All right, we will be moving on for the stuff we didn't lower tier, trash, other stuff quicker, but try to bring us a little bit more in depth to our higher tier stuff tonight too. So
Fair
let us move on.
Next up is I may be a guild receptionist, but I'll solo any boss to clock out on time.
So, for those of you thinking this is a fantasy show about a guild receptionist who secretly has to hide that she's a top tier adventurer while trying to get out on time from her job, you would be correct for your first two freaking episodes.
Yeah. This one we had pretty high hopes for, but I feel like it really didn't deliver on those hopes. Um, Animation
Because
quality
it's
was okay, but like a lot of like bad CG mixed in, and you're not gonna get any Sakuga or anything like that out of the show.
I kept poking my head in for like the big stuff just because everything in between after that those first episodes was fantasy adventure anime style. Oh yeah, dungeon fights, lore, a little bit of lore, a little bit of, and it's the fights were underwhelming, the battles were
It
it's
feels like they put the least amount of budget for the show into the fights.
yeah, they were just mm,
Like they spent all
they
their money
felt
on backgrounds in the guild house and ran out of budget to animate the fight sequences or something.
the fights felt like PS1 JRPG battles with like big explosions every so often.
Yeah, yeah. Reasonably accurate. Like lots of particle effects, but not much substance.
Yep. I would have like the premise, the start of this. I was really happy that I think you were really happy with like what this show promised and with its freaking name.
Yep,
But then just
unfortunately, it did not follow through. And what it did follow through with was very hollow feeling.
I I don't want to. This thing, it doesn't do anything necessarily wrong. It doesn't do anything necessarily bad.
But
I
it's
want to throw this
fantasy
into
trash.
it's fantasy trash. Okay, we are in complete agreement. Like I didn't want to throw this even into C tier. This is just fantasy trash. This has the level. Did it have a level system or did it just have a skill system?
It just had a skill system, but the skills had like ranks. So a skill of a lower tier couldn't compete with a skill of a higher tier.
RPG ranking system. That's a good way to find yourself in the trash tier. You gotta be a. We don't mind it, but it's not imaginative, guys. Like, come up with lore for that. Well, you could have been great, but you turned out to be just McDonald's. The
All
better
right.
name.
Next up we have Zenshu. Reminded me that the show had probably some of the best music of this season.
That OP is on my favorited playlist right now. Um okay, so I'm going to have an extra bias towards this. I believe Yuki might have an extra bias. Zetsu is a love letter to classic animation. I don't mean as in CGI. I don't mean early 2000s. God, I don't even mean 90s. This is some of the oldest, biggest names in animation. In every show this thing loves to reference, loves to bring up, loves to show you the pure joy in that old series would find its way onto any of our S tier rankings of any season. And this show pays great homage to them in so many different ways.
Yeah, it definitely does a great job. Like, there's such a huge mix of references and stuff, all kind of pulled into this show. Some of them, very subtle unless you're familiar with that source material. And I certainly agree that I have a bias for this show. But at the same time, I think my final judgment on it will probably be pretty fair.
Yep. That being said, this is an isekai, so if that's starting to wear thin on you, be warned on that. There are no skill ranking systems, abilities that aren't woven into a hard fantasy world, but this is a very interesting story. Just not reveling in the and celebrating old animation, but going into what inspired current generations, what drives them, and what keeps them going to create, as well as also dipping its toe into the outlines of different creators on a same concept.
Now, that said, partly because of the material that it references on some levels, this show does get weird and hard to follow. um, in same kind of way that, like, Coolie Coolie might be a really, really cool show, but it also has a lot of, like, these really high concepts that you're not necessarily quite sure if they are just a little bit out of your reach to understand, or if they're just so drug induced that you can't possibly actually comprehend them without taking an equal amount of drugs. Um, this show has a little bit of that going for it, especially as you get deeper into the season. So it's definitely not for everybody. However, it is by far the best animated show of this season. Um, like, hands down, I can't think of anything else that even comes close. Can you?
Are we talking honestly both story and animation wise, it just itself. Um, this is Studio Mappa with a crew of people who. Hey, would you guys like to do a passion project about your favorite shows as a kid from your childhood? And I think everybody screamed and then decided they weren't sleeping at home for a couple months.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure. Um, so Yeah, like animation wise, again, I don't think anything else touched this season. Um, it story wise, it was also quite good, but it did get a little weird and murky for part of it. Had a pretty decent ending as well. Um, my final judgment, though, this is probably an A tier show. Um, and that's partly because it is a little bit niche in terms of its audience. Um, which I just don't think, unless it manages to develop unexpectedly like a cult following, I don't think this is a show people will remember much going forward.
This is going to be one of the shows that if you're an old anime fan or a fan of animation for anime, you will enjoy this thoroughly. You will love this. Unfortunately, if you are a newer connoisseur of anime, if you don't know some of the history, if you don't know the classics, and I mean like this show was pulling from stuff from
It was
I don't
pulling
want
from
to
like
say this.
Mazinger and stuff like
I
that,
don't
wasn't
want to
it?
say this. No, it didn't quite go that far. I don't think it went further than the 70s. The two oldest shows this pulls from are the original Tiger Mask and Yunyo, which, like I said, I believe they're both 70s shows.
Yeah, well, and it definitely pulled from stuff as late as like the early 90s.
Did it?
Yeah, like Record of Lodoss War, for instance, was like late 80s, early 90s era.
Okay, 'cause there was a handful of late 80s stuff. I just didn't remember any early 90s thing on there, but
Yeah, it was
this
like on the cusp of early 90s for some of it. It's close enough that I can't place it well enough because back in that time period, we usually didn't get stuff into the US until a couple years after it came out in Japan.
but yeah, there are so many beautiful references, stories, like once again, it might take you a watch or two to get your fully if wrap your head around the character story arcs for some of them, or if you're a bit younger and haven't had some of the life experiences this show kind of brings up, there are things that you won't be able to understand, but
Incidentally, something I
oh
noticed in the preview just now, she has the pegboard in the preview before she dies. Um, and without actually giving spoilers, if you watch the show, you'll catch why that's strange.
yeah, there was a couple odd things going on here. The one last thing I did want to bring up, when I say it's also a classic feel, this is a 1980s anime fantasy world, which the difference in that is one, the I'm just gonna say the furries are full on old school animal furries. These are your Suikoden style, this let's see here. I'll be the good. If anyone here would be familiar with the furry scale, these are your threes and your fours for the most part. What with one notable five. Um, but that's I don't like it's the problem is this hits me on so many good notes because I love that era. I love that aesthetic and I want to put it in S, but I think you are right. It's just hitting me a little bit too perfectly to me to get a good bias on that one. And it does have those weird feelings. The
Yeah.
the fact that you have to be heavily inebriated on several substances to kind of help wrap your head around a few concepts in this also helps me. But the town I live in has 6 colleges.
That is a lot of colleges.
Only 2 of them are technicals too. But so yeah, there is a lot there, but I can agree. I can put that down to A. I can definitely see that just because I knew there were points that I could not binge this. I had to set this down around, I think it was episode 10, let it finish, because I knew old anime hits hard. It either didn't finish or hits you like a goddamn sledgehammer.
Yeah, there was
With
definitely a few weeks there where I just kind of let this build up before I ended up going back and just binging the rest of it at the end.
because there are emotion. It hits you with emotions. This
We don't always understand what those emotions are, but it does hit you with them.
Yeah, I think there were 3 shows that had me actually crying, and this was one of them.
Ow. All right. Well, if we're ready to move on,
Yep, I think that's good. I got all my out of my system.
next up
What do
we
we
have
have?
Medaka Kuroiwa is impervious to my charms. All right. Well, this is the show that has probably easily my most hated female protagonist of the season. Just
You don't like
everything
the kind
about
of
her.
women that relies on her looks, cute charms to get the way what she wants?
Yeah, everything about her is just completely antithetical to um anything that I can stand in a person. um Not only that, but it needs to be said off the bat, this show is positively riddled with just dumb animation errors and stuff. Very famously, it kind of exploded on the internet that, like, there's a scene near the beginning where she's supposed to be intentionally flashing her panties at the protagonist, and instead is flashing everyone but him in the shot. Um, just makes no sense at all. This show is like, it's worth a hate watch if you're interested in watching something that's that kind of bad. But I can't say that this should go anywhere except the trash category.
I'm surprised you're even agreeing with the trash. Like, as far as like, is this shoujo technically? Like, it
No,
gave me that
you couldn't call
vibe.
this shoujo because this is really targeted towards a male audience who is supposed to be, uh, enjoying this female lead and all of her shenanigans. The problem with that is the fan service is neither good nor plentiful. Um, And of course, also, if you have problems with that sort of thing, the female lead is underage. Uh, so like it's just
One raiders
not
from
a good show.
Kigurumi
But it's
have
also,
joined.
if I'm being objective, not so bad that you can't get entertainment value out of it. It's actually not the worst thing from an entertainment perspective that I've seen this season by a wide margin. It's just very poorly done, and a lot of the enjoyment you'll get is from how bad it is, not how good it
Yo-ho.
is. Hi,
And
Kiku!
hello,
Welcome!
and Kiku and Pix, they are both rating in. How was stream, guys?
Thanks.
We are only just starting. Yuki is ranting about how she hates girls who rely on their looks and bad animation.
It's not even just the relying on looks. Like, I can understand that. If you want to leverage your assets, you go, girl. But if your entire being is based around how much you want other people to worship you because you think you're that special from being cute, I cannot handle that level of narcissism.
Yeah, so that is definitely going into our.
Don't
You
listen
said,
to Agent Everyone. He didn't watch Solo
hey,
Leveling.
we only do new shows.
Boo.
That's part of the rules of this thing, Pix. Trust me, if we were doing season 2s, I would have a lot less to bitch about and a lot more to be happy about.
Oh, I can't wait to see
All of the
Solo
season
Leveling's
2s from
rank.
this season were really good.
You won't be seeing Solo Leveling's rank because it will not be covered since it is not a new show this season. We did rank it at A rank,
That's
as I
fair.
recall, in our previous seasons. That was largely my influence, I believe.
Yep, the season 1 did not have either the, I think it was the crew behind it wasn't quite firing on all cylinders yet, or they didn't have enough budget because they
No,
didn't believe in
no,
it as much
we
yet.
blame Agent.
But yeah, go ahead, try to blame me. But we have a bit to get through, and this is the list from that. I actually had a couple extras on here we didn't need to have.
By the by, you have Fujitech Agent and Agent.
I know. Fugi just stays up.
I'm not
I
gonna
don't turn it
try.
off.
I'm gonna succeed.
All right.
Yeah.
Should we move on from this one, or did you have anything to add?
No, that's like the fact that you put it in trash and not skip kind of surprised me, but we
I
can
do
move
try
on.
my best to be objective and not purely rank off of my own biases.
All right, on to our next trailer and next show.
Next up, we have Uboblot. All right. Content warning for this one, just from the fact that they literally couldn't make it past episode 1 without, again, very
7
literally
raiders from
dressing. Whoa.
Hybrid VT.
Dressing
raiders,
the
welcome.
lolly as a actual prostitute.
You've been visited by Hybrid VT
Oh,
and her
that's-
hijinksies.
Okay.
Send this to 10 of your friends or you'll
how
stub
much
your
of this
toe
did you
getting
happen
into
to
the
watch,
shower.
Yuki?
I only caught episode 1 for this one. I know it was kind of on your side of the list, but I had hoped to catch more.
You've been
It just
visited
fell
by
into the
Hybrid
Prime
VT and
Video
her
hole.
hijinksies. Send
Yep.
this to 10 of
Okay,
your
so
friends or you'll stub your
Uboblot
toe getting
is
into the
based off
shower.
a manga, a fairly old one at this point.
I
I think
love
it even
you,
has
Yuki.
a sequel now.
I am just.
Hey, Halbert,
Dead
how's it
tired.
going? Dead tired. Have fun.
Did 3 streams in a
When
row.
I am a fan
For
of the
some
manga.
reason.
I have been waiting for it to get a little bit further before I catch up. I like to watch stuff in
Enjoy your
chunks like
stream.
that.
Yikes.
But
Such streams.
when I started this, I was
Please
happy.
take good
I
care
felt
of
something
them.
was very off.
Thanks.
And it took me
Enjoy your rest.
until I was talking to my buddy who
They are
also happens to
fragile.
enjoy the series to realize they skipped the first volume of the manga. The one that helps explain the main character, his motivations, the general supporting cast that shows up in episode 1 for no apparent reason, and a bunch of other things. And going through the show, they decided to very
Welcome,
much
Raiders.
skip on a couple other bits. There's just a little bit here missing, a little bit there. They managed to keep in all the accentuating fan service and a chunk of the dark, I don't really want to say gory, but bloody, dark aspects of the politics. You miss a little bit of that drive. You miss a little bit of that subtlety that was in the manga, that was a big part of Ketzel's its character. And this show wants to be Vinland Saga's quality, and it winds up in the Berserk era. It's better than Berserk 2016, 2017. Definitely better than what that did. But it's not quite up there.
Yeah,
And
I
it
know this
keeps
show
going-
definitely had some problems. It seemed probably slightly above par for this season, but just based off of episode 1, it could have definitely tanked after that too.
Yeah, animation is not my strong suit. So I'm not the best at telling you, oh, this is great. Oh, this is not. Oh, this is. It was serviceable for the most part. There was nothing in it that made me go, ugh, other than the fan service, which just feels so out of play. It's like I don't even remember that being that big in the manga. I'm a little BSB is one like wants to rip that open and compare it to the show. Like, how prevalent was this? Like, how often did they show this off? It's like, this feels to be a little too in my face about someone who had to crawl back from the dead to exact his revenge a decade later.
Feels like it's kind of
Story.
detracting from the primary premise, huh?
Yeah, and it's there's so much going on because this is supposed to be a show about such a crazy world, about political, corruption, about how a kingdom built on lies will crumble in the face of like true strife. There's so much they could have done here, and it failed.
Missed
It just
opportunities, huh?
yeah, it's just so much. Like if they would have gotten that right, I could have put this in the A. If I feel B, just from how much it does do good, but as a
From
fan
what
of
I
the
could
series,
tell, overall quality wise, I could agree with B. Based off of what I saw in episode 1, assuming that quality stays relatively consistent. Especially if we're comparing it to the other stuff this season, it it certainly looks a cut above most of the other things that we're running
yeah,
into this time around.
sheer animation quality, it's not bad. It's just it they left too much on the cutting room floor. They cut too much out. They didn't let it they wanted to push through the story, which I could very much understand. This is a very slow burn story.
So, do we think that it kind of dropped from B into fantasy trash then, perhaps?
It's dark enough. I don't want to put it in the trash, but at the same point, you might be right on that though. Just because it's edgy enough, it's
It might have
kinky enough.
tripped in the dark and landed in the trash dumpster.
Yeah, maybe later seasons can help pull it further out, but I think you're right. I'm gonna put this at the top of the trash just because of everything we have. But we also do try to keep stuff ranked in its own category. But yeah, no trash on that. Just I don't hate it. I'm just disappointed.
Yeah. I'm not angry, son. I'm just disappointed.
Yep. All right. What do we got next on the list, Yuki?
Next up, the elf girl's cat is secretly an S-ranked monster, also known as Bihineko.
Okay then.
Yeah, this show is definitely fantasy trash category, isekai trash category. No questions about that. It was among the more enjoyable ones of those we had this season, at least if you're the kind of person that likes to see, like, stuff kind of getting built up other than the person. Like, towns being improved and things like that.
Quick summary of this, and hello, was it Cage or Micah on there? Man gets killed, gets teleported to a fantasy world, gets overpowered abilities from goddess, slowly builds harem. This one happens to count more on his ability to build materials as an alchemist more than I am OP as crud and can just swing and win. The biggest twist I will say is on this is I don't even know if it's a twist or good concept because we have seen it quite a bit. Is other isekai protagonists that kind of serve as rivals possibly later?
They're arguably the villains to a large degree, with one exception.
Well, the
But-
other part of the antagonist faction at the very least.
Yeah. Also noteworthy, this could impact some viewers' enjoyment of the show. This is one of those shows that involves, like, a magical slavery contract system. So if that's very much not your thing, you might not be into this show.
I hate the fact that we have to ask Japan. Like, we understand you have a couple weird concepts. We know you're trying to get better. Don't add slavery back into your rotation, please. Just no. This is something to be broken. This is a bad concept. No, it is not charming. Please stop it.
Yeah, also, it puts the protagonist in a weird place because ostensibly the whole reason that the bad guys are bad is because they're so into like slavery and racism.
Ever
But
heard of
he
Rise of Shield Hero?
just kind of like starts out going full into hiring slaves.
Yep. Yeah, we are familiar with that.
Yes, we
I
are.
don't know if that's where is that where the trend really started picking up steam? I know
I
around the time it came out, it popped up a lot, but
It certainly didn't hurt in popularizing it, I think, but I think also a lot of this is just like the author's barely disguised fetish leaking out over and over again.
hmm that being said, I liked it better than Guild Receptionist. It didn't disappoint me. It showed me what it was on the cover, and I enjoyed what it could be.
Yeah, it was, decent junk food.
All right, anything else you want on that one, Yuki?
No, I think that's plenty for that show.
All right,
Next up, Flower and Asura. Alright, this is a show that is based around characters, whole thing being reading Japanese poetry out loud to people. Um, this one was just far too niche for me. In concept, to be saved even by the above par animation or the soft Yuri sub themes. Did you end up watching any of this, Agent?
I didn't realize this was a show.
I think you said the same thing when we did the preview the first time around.
Yeah. One thing I do want to ask, do you know if the broadcasting club is a thing they're trying to push in Japan, or is a thing that's coming back? Because I swear that
Oh.
recently, the last couple seasons of anime, it's been popping up, or last couple years, it's been popping up more and more.
I don't know. There's nothing I've heard to that effect, but like it could just be one of those things where they're looking for a club that hasn't been used as much to try to kind of set things apart a little bit. Because every show has the student council and like the manga club or whatever.
Or the sports, whatever anime we're doing currently club.
Yeah. So I mean, it looked nice. It was decently pretty, but the show was very obscure in its content and not also very slow paced. For me, this ended up being a skip. I couldn't bring myself to watch it. It sounds like Agent completely forgot it existed. Um, there's got to be an audience for this. I don't know who it is outside of Japan, if I'm being really honest.
At least we could say there wasn't. Well, at least as far as we could tell, there weren't any shows that didn't get brought over while this one did.
There were two shows that did not get brought over.
Yeah, all right, whatever.
Yep.
I,
And in fact, one of them I
actively
was pretty
don't want-
interested in watching, but
Yeah, I actually don't bother to look at it because every time we've looked into those, it's like, wait, I actually really like this one. Why wasn't this one brought? Why did you bring any of this garbage over instead?
yeah, I was pretty interested in watching the I have a crush at work, can you keep a secret? Um, but that did not get translated, sadly, as far as I'm aware.
Yep. Okay, that's enough for that little bit of ranting out of me.
Up next is
Yuki.
Okitsura, fell in love with an Okinawan girl. Did you end up watching any of this, Agent?
I got the bit at the initial, then I went back and sped through a bit more. That there are a couple problems I have with this. The first one being it really wants to be a tourist anime for Okinawa for
Oh, it
the Japanese
100%
people.
is. There's no question about that.
Yep. Which isn't a bad thing because showing off the interesting concepts of an area, especially as remote and unique as that, can be very entertaining on its own right. The other problem is if you're familiar with a trope in anime of the is it the Okinawa accent or did they have another term for it?
that is one of the accents. Or what that is a term I have seen used for that. Yes.
Um, it's extremely heavy. You want to think if you're an English speaker, the proper British accent or the old hillbilly Bob strangle with a bob in the bowl and all that kind of jazz. It's if you speak English, you can kind of tell the difference, and you can generally make it out. I have actually run into a couple of straight up hillbillies that man, whew, they talk about accents. But unfortunately, we are reading subtitles, and a accent that's hard to understand does not really work well with subtitles.
Yeah. That is definitely a challenge they faced. I think it's fair to say that Okinawan is kind of similar to like uh Pidgin from like the Louisiana area, where it has like basically words that are a completely different language mixed into it, or that are like modified to be like somewhere between the two languages. Um, but my take on this show, um, they did a good job making the girls cute. The kind of ancillary love story that kind of tugs things along is decent as far as this season's concerned. Um, there is some very egregious CGI periodically in the show, but it doesn't come up very often. And weirdly, their mascot character seemed to get better animated as the show progressed. Um,
Eh,
he was kind of rough in the first couple episodes, dropping a lot of frames and stuff, but he looked a little nicer later on. Um, those background dancers, though, those were just comically bad.
oh, background CGI characters that look bad? Never.
Yeah,
Not in
these
my
were
anime.
probably the worst CGI characters this season. Again, comically bad. That said, as Agent noted, I really, as someone who enjoys learning about things like Japanese culture, um, I think there's a real place for this in terms of like it's speaking to that love of learning and finding out like weird, cool factoids about a part of Japan that we don't usually see that much of. Um, I think this probably objectively is kind of like a C show. Um, if you're not into learning about Okinawa, this probably isn't for you, but it's a decent watch.
Romance is a bit basic again, not too much going on, but there's nobody I really hated. Just a lot of oh this, oh that
Yeah,
kind of
and
moments for
I
me.
mean they did a good enough job that like the rival character felt like someone you actually wanted to root for instance, which is better than we've seen with a lot of shows this season.
Yep. But all right, what do we have on the up?
Next up is Medalist. Unless you want to save that one for later too.
This happened to be also one of the ones because was the Hulu one, I believe.
I think it was Hulu. I'm not totally sure. So this ended
Right.
up being a skip mostly just because of the platform it was on and that tending to fall off our radar, I think.
Yep. No, it's Hulu. The tag I have. Yeah, I remember watching the start of this, and I think I forgot about it because it was the only Hulu. If there's a couple things on Hulu, it helps me remember it. But that being that one, oh, it trips me up so bad.
Yeah, it's hard to remember to go check a platform for just one show. Um, from the looks of it, as far as I could tell, like this was something I was kind of interested in watching, but definitely completely fell off my radar. Um, that said, I think this is fair to say if the concept of watching 3D CGI lollies on ice does not appeal to you, this probably will not be the show for you.
Yeah, it does try to go into more of the skating technicality, if I remember correctly, from what I remember watching on the first couple. But it also brings in the fact that that's also a very weird and a bit uncomfortable nowadays for the child aspect of it to do this.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, with stuff like figure skating, realistically, the characters would be starting at a very young age because the people who compete in, like, Olympic figure skating are typically somewhere in, like, the 12 to 18 range, as I recall.
Yeah, like I said, it's I always have the problem of it feels like that almost beauty pageant kind of feel, and it just
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah.
understand there's a little bit of an inherent creep factor to that. I will not disagree. So again, if it's your kind of content, go for it. If it's not, you probably aren't going to be interested in that one.
Or if you're just kind of looking at figure skating, I it looks like it could be good. Like the problem is we had a hard time telling. If you have Disney Plus, if you have Hulu, maybe give it a watch. But unfortunately, this flew under our radars.
All
All
right.
right.
Next up, we have even given the worthless appraiser class, I'm actually the strongest. Yeah, there's no excusing this show. It's I can't believe it's not isekai fantasy trash through and through. It looks way more epic from the preview than it is by far. Um, the elf boobs boobily. There's a harem that goes all the way down to the lolly range. It's got skill systems everywhere you look and stat screens and which really makes even less sense in the context of a show that's not an isekai.
Yeah. Honestly, the one thing it even rubs me a little bit the wrong way that I just keep getting irritated on bit by bit is, oh, he's this class. That's completely worthless. Then protagonist goes to show, no, it's actually the strongest because of X, and nobody gave it a chance. It's like I don't mind. I understand in real life that sometimes it's like a certain scale that when you do video game analogy equivalents to it in your show, just so everybody can relate to it easier. Everybody knows most video game classes are very worth it, are very good, or if you just understand the right guide, are good. Quit making that a trope. It's dumb. Very much of most of us do not like it.
All right, I'm going to expand on that for a second because the thing that really rubbed me the wrong way about that was that they had a whole direction they could have gone with that would have made sense for the class that they're talking about, where they could have been like, okay, well, it turns out actually that knowing information about your enemy is really good, right? That's not where they went with it. Instead, all of his stuff is just like OP super abilities that are only vaguely called anything to do with Identify that are actually granted to him by an external source in the form of a magic eye given to him by somebody else that keeps getting more and more powerful in ways that confuse even him about the fact that it's happening. So they completely failed to even leave up to that basic portion of the premise, which means that this is really it's just fantasy slop, and the only real reason to watch this show is for elf boobs. If I'm being
There were plenty of
abundantly
this
honest.
season.
What was that?
I say there was plenty of that this season too. So
Yep, and there's not even an abundant quantity of said fan service in this show. It's certainly not by far the steamiest one that we have going.
oh, it was like the thing they like to do the most was the ear waggle, which ears are your thing, I guess. I,
They didn't even
this,
do
this,
that the best.
yeah, yeah. This was the schlockiest of the schlock this season. This is the schlockiest of the schlock this season.
I'll grant you
I
that.
had to,
I mean, there's definitely
yeah.
worse shows, but schlock definitely feels like a very fitting word for the show.
Yep. If you, uh, it's pure trash. It's
Side note before we dig in, the ending theme on this show goes weirdly hard.
yeah. There are a lot of weirdly good song openings and endings this season in a whole bunch of weird places. That being said, I'm normally the villain S side of our reviews.
I
I
actually
haven't
did
had
watch this one to completion.
Yep, I was gonna like get into that, but I haven't had this much fun with a villainess show in a long time. This very much like on the boiler. It's like it gives you what it says on the front. This is your middle A. Oh, he's how are you gonna say this is the old man in an
I think
Otome game.
middle age was the right term. Middle age office worker is how they describe him in the show.
Yeah, yeah, I don't know. 50 feels old for middle age though, but all
It's
right, that's
certainly on the high end of it, yeah.
I can live with that. I'm rounding up those years enough where I can agree. I can be happy with the 50 being middle aged. Um, very well done. It's like you think the joke of, oh, he's a well off, sensible, um, I don't want to say kind, respectful office worker. No, government worker. Even it's like he
Yes.
is a very well done bureaucrat, and that aspect gets so many good jokes. It has that almost Freaky Friday kind of feel to it of juxtaposition.
But also the otaku aspect adds a lot too, not just for the main character, but also the ancillary family members who we see a lot more of as we start to get into like the mid and late portion of the season.
All right, because his wife and daughter are watching him through the guise of the Otomo game he is stuck in.
Meanwhile, he's well, that's spoilers, but
Yeah, there is a bit going on, and I think there's is continuing on to a season 2 directly. I don't think it's stopping at 13 or 12 episodes. I don't remember what it had exactly, but it does feel like we're getting more with this. Um, I this isn't trash. I don't think. I think this gets into
it has some
he,
vaguely trash vibes to it. But I agree, it probably doesn't belong in the trash category. It's a little too weirdly good for that. And a big part of that again is like that that really well implemented otaku aspect of it, where they're bringing in like these pieces of culture, and the main character has just enough of an understanding of what's going on to as like an outsider to the genre without it being the usual character who just like is obsessed with the game that they're stuck in and knows everything about it.
yeah, there is a lot of fun and interesting things going on here. I think our first B is a good place to do this. This is
I'm
definitely
in
not
agreement.
a
It feels kind of B tier to me. It's a
yeah,
high C, low B, maybe.
and once again, also a weirdly good theme too.
Yeah, for sure. Not just the music either. Like, they went weirdly hard on the animation for that as well, for a show that otherwise has a pretty limited animation budget.
Yep. Okay.
Moving along, we have I left my
Yep.
A rank party to help my students reach the dungeon depths. Want to take first impressions on this one, or should I?
I'll throw down a few. This show felt like it had a bit more potential at its opening, but quickly diverts into oh, we're going to be a fantasy show about a kind of. Was it his class that was looked down upon, or was it just he
No,
was looked down
he
upon?
himself was just being, like, weirdly abused. Like, they were basically taking advantage of him for doing all the logistics for the party, and then acting like that was, like, all he was good for, even though it clearly objectively wasn't. And also their party fell apart without him doing that. um,
It's
I don't know. This
like
this show is just full of all kinds of stupid holes and things that don't make sense. Um, Animation's okay. Characters are okay, but like this is purely fantasy trash for sure. Um, there's
it
really nothing
felt like
redeeming
they
this
were
show.
it felt like they were going through a checklist of fantasy tropes that are currently popular and built a show around those.
Pretty much, yeah.
Like I could tell you more tropes that happen in the show than reasons why they happen.
Yeah, that seems pretty accurate. And then they bring in things like live streaming your actual dungeon raids, because obviously that makes sense.
Well, it feels like they wanted to go with that aspect for the streamer aspect. There is some interesting world building you could do with that concept around, especially with oh yeah, no, dungeons are things that we have to deal with and explore and figure out why the heck this mysterious dark thing popped up. It's no, it's just a part of the thing. We stream this. It's we like streaming. It's it had some potential in it. It just I think it was just because it took some good pieces from good shows that have done it better, and I'm just thinking
It
of
just
those
the
instead.
stuff that happens just doesn't make sense within the context of
Follow
their
on
own
Blue Sky
universe.
at agent
Um,
123.bsky.social and watch the archives at
the thing that kind of
https
rubbed
colon
me the
double
wrong
forward
way the
slash
most about the streaming aspect was how,
www.youtube.com
like,
forward slash at agent
they had
q123.
characters that were basically VTubers doing reaction streams to their stream, and that just doesn't make any sense in their world.
Yeah, there is a
But I
I
won't
would
I won't linger on this show. It's not worth our time to linger on it, frankly.
no, it's just once again, it's disappointing. It's
Yeah.
disappointing trash.
It's
All right.
yeah. We talked about this one quite a bit in the early part of the season. I don't want to spend too much time reiterating those points. But before I get into what I want to say, do you have anything that you want to put in about this one, Agent?
Not so much. Like one of the key aspects that might be lost in translation is the Japanese culture is a very respectful, very proper people and how they act and how you should be act around them. One of the biggest selling points of the main doctor is that she is very brash and very in your face about stuff to almost an obscene level to Japanese culture. In America, she would just be an average, like aggressive person at best, at
If
worst,
even
even.
that, yeah. She's
It's
just kind
like,
of a normal person by US standards.
yeah, and it's that's about it. Other than that, I'll let you go off on the rest here.
Sure. So one of the things that we touched on a lot last time around was that you need to have like kind of an extensive medical knowledge to really have any hope of following this show. Um in a way that you would be able to appreciate it as a mystery and or have any hope to, and to have a possibility of like figuring out what was going on before they revealed it, which is like, kind of one of the big things for mysteries, right? um I need to
You're right.
go a step further and say that this show completely lost me um around midway through the season, when it became abundantly evident to me that every single case that they were doing was stolen from other mystery properties that I have seen in the past.
Ooh, I was unaware.
And
I did not pick up on
done
that.
more poorly. Um, so, and what made that the most abundantly clear to me is one of the episodes hinged around the side effects of a medication that was given for a condition that I myself personally suffer from, and thus am keenly aware that no one has been prescribed the treatment that this episode revolved around in over 20 years. There have been better medications on the market, and that also means that if you do know things about medicine, you would actually be thrown off the track for what was going on here, unless you also happen to know that the plot was being stolen from something else that came out a long time ago that you had already seen, as I had.
Okay, damn, a bit more scathing on that one. Just because, like I said, we covered a lot of this, and it's very hard to go into any further detail without just doing spoiler chunks on this. Would you think C, or do you want to say skip on this one?
You know, I'm going to say I feel like this should actually go in skip because A, I wasn't able to bring myself to complete the series, and B, this series violates the most fundamental basis of being its own genre, which is that it doesn't really give. Well, A, it basically pirates everything from other sources, and B, in doing so, it reformats things in such a way that the viewer has really little to no hope of ever being able to participate in the mystery.
Yeah.
You can't really fail much more than that at being a mystery.
Yeah. All right, Yuki, what do we got next?
Next up, we have Hint into Another World from Salaryman to Big Four. I will let you take the lead on this because I know this was almost certainly one of your favorite shows of the season.
We're at the point where isekai power fantasies are, hey, it's a nice, respectable job where my boss likes me, gives me the tools I need to complete my job, and doesn't work me into the ground for a pay that doesn't matter.
The true power fantasy in our day and age.
Oh, that makes me want to scream. I'm holding that inside at the moment. Oh, not getting into any further politics. That being said, this is an isekai uh,
It's an
power
isekai for
fantasy.
the working adult.
Yeah. Um, the downsides I will say to this are most of the problems are solved very easily and very simply with basic managerial skills, basic,
Your personal
commerce
skills.
skills, and which could all be very big problems in a workplace and kind of like that, which I've been in jobs that have good, jobs that have bad, and it's amazing how much of a difference that does make. That being said, the main character is likable, the story is decent. Like I said, I am enjoying this. Yuki, what would you say on the animation side for this sucker?
Oh, the animation side is budget at best. The best thing I can say that this show had going for it on the animation side is, if I remember right, they didn't really rely on CG for the most part. Like, their janky monster hordes and stuff were mostly hand animated. But this show definitely was on a shoestring budget and was probably being pulled along by some really uh like trainee level animation teams.
They didn't do horribly. Everything is passable and decent. And I do say I did enjoy some of the interesting character designs. I think that might be more from the look like the manga this is based off of, though.
Yeah.
Um, I enjoyed this. This is trash. This is pure trash.
Oh
That
yeah.
being said, I want to put this towards the top of our trash pile today
It sits
because
atop the trash heap.
yes, does. The demon lord looks proudly upon his forge his water general. Um there is some interesting world building, but this is a very basic show. If this had wanted to dig in more, if it wanted to expand a few things out, it could do better, but overall this is nice, comfy, well done trash.
Yeah, I don't really have a lot to add to that. I feel like I'm pretty much in the same boat on that assessment. Um, you know, if they had a bigger animation budget, obviously that would have made it better. If they had expanded more on a lot of those concepts and maybe stepped up to some more creative or interesting solutions to some stuff, that also would have been great. But that's not really what the show ultimately was about. It was just, the lens through which we viewed this power fantasy, and that's fine. It's
Yep,
at least
a
honest about what it is.
yep.
All right. I'm gonna propose that we go ahead and take our kind of mid-session bio break at this point, because I could use some additional water personally.
I was very prepped for this. I have 3 water bottles next to me today.
Oh wow.
Well, okay, I should say water bottles. I have a water jug, a Gatorade, and an energy drink ready to go. But all right, we will be back shortly, everyone, and see you in a minute or two.
BRB. Alright, I have returned, and from the way that things are moving around on the screen, I assume Agent has as well.
Yeah, I'm here.
Alright,
Oh, are you off break yet?
I am, yes.
Oh,
Did I
I
not
was waiting for you to come back. I, I was waiting for you to come back before I jumped off of my scene, but it's not a problem. They just heard me on yours before they heard me on mine. But all right, what? Hold on. I gotta scroll down. I really need to make a scene for just this co-op bit. But all right, our I gotta pull that up too. Actually, there we go. What do we have next?
Right, next up we have... I'm a noble on the brink of ruin, so I might as well try mastering magic. I can set the setting correctly on my side because everything moved around on me.
Yeah.
Second, I'm not even in the right scene. And yet somehow it was still working. Alright, there we go. Now we're in the right scene.
Tell me you weren't, then you weren't. Tell me you were, then you weren't.
What?
Oh, no, I don't think I'm incoherent at the moment.
Okay.
Play.
If you watched The Seventh Prince and thought, I would really love to have some discount bargain bin, we have Seventh Prince at home, then this is the show for you.
This is also like that was okay, slight difference. Like that was a reincarnation. This is a isekai kind of. It is an isekai, but like that aspect is like worthless to the premise of the show. It feels like I don't.
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
Unfortunately, this is the. Are we on the 3 or this is the second one of? Hey, this premise sounds kind of cool of learning a magic based system in a fantasy world from an isekai character's perspective. Abe masters magic in episode. Was it 1 or was it 2?
It might have been one.
Otherwise,
Yeah.
it then devolves into fantasy. I'm OP as heck, and I'm going to get all of the Oh my god! This also had the slavery contracts too, didn't it?
Did this one have this? Well, I guess sort of, yeah. Yeah, it did. Like, technically everyone entered it voluntarily. In fact, they practically demanded it in most cases, but... And they were technically becoming his familiars, but it's basically the same thing. They
It's
did say
okay. It's
outright that
like
they would not be able to disobey his commands.
all right, there it is. It's like it just familiar packs. Okay, that's a little odd, but it's like okay, I can. That's a nice workaround. But yeah, no, they did say that. And it's like, it's this might have gotten a little higher ranking, but unfortunately, it has some really good competition this season for its own concept.
Also, content warning in that, of course, the ancient dragon turns out to be a lolly.
I'm a Fire Emblem fan, and even I'm irritated by that. Uh, okay,
Okay. Next up, we have
I
Promise of Wizard.
hold on a second. Hold on, because I have a single bit I want to do. I just need to know who does this really quick.
Go ahead and look that up.
Um, by me, what does me do? Why do I know me? Because this is a very oh, I will look this up after when we go to the next trailer. But all right, so because Yuki, I believe you left this one to me for the most part.
I watched one episode of it. I will let you take the lead because I think you watched more, but I definitely have some take of my own to throw in.
Okay, yeah, there's one more thing. All right, so this is a anime based on a gotcha game, and those generally go into one of two different directions. The good direction of they take the concept of the world to slowly dig you into it, let the characters from the game themselves be introduced organically as you explore more parts of the world and get more introduced to it. Or B, they throw a bunch of the favorited characters at you right out of the gate. They introduce the gotcha system in world and just kind of peter along through the world by going through each individual character's like story and archetype, so everyone has their favorite character's chance to shine, and you don't feel slighted by not seeing the one that you like the best not get shown. Now, the one premise I will give this show that I found very interesting is the big calamity and big bad that they all have to fight is the moon. I'm sorry, I just really wanted to do that. It was very fun in there. I strained my voice a little bit doing that. Probably peaked on my mic too. Um, this does the second. This is the second so badly. Dear God, I don't think I even heard too much of the other characters later on. Thinking about it. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Yuki.
So, I'm gonna get right up on the mic for this. At least on my stream side. And, I feel the need to say this is the exact kind of garbage drivel that drags down the entirety of the anime genre as a whole and is the sort of thing that makes it difficult for us as enthusiasts to have the thing that we love recognized as an art form. It should not
What?
exist, it should be killed with fire, and I'm of the strong opinion that this sort of thing just drains resources and talent from projects that could have been actually good.
By the way, everyone, I will put money down that this isn't the most hated show out of this season for Yuki either.
Probably not, no.
I have
And
a good guess on what is for yours. It's that This is my third least favorite show from this season, by the way, including the stuff that
Um,
I just bounced off of.
and I will remind too that I have attempted to be abundantly fair, even with the shows that I have a bias against. Um, I can't do that with this show. It has no redeeming qualities. It is a waste of animation talent through and through. There,
Episode
from the
one had some.
objective perspective, I
Yep,
can't. Yeah.
we're gonna give it a little bit of the episode one had some interesting concepts. It's like they were introducing a very neat world, a very interesting thing, and they were kind of just throwing you in and letting it kind of evolve around you, which can work. This isn't that though. It's no, but we need to get the story moving. We need to introduce characters. Go, 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 go. It's no. I'm gonna put this in skip. I'm gonna put this at. For now, it will be the bottom of skip.
And I will
It's
fully acknowledge I've got biases against the type of show this is. The male gotcha harem has no appeal to me. I get that. My hatred of this show goes so much further than that.
yeah. And once again, this isn't going to be the bottom of the barrel for either of us. This is my third least favorite show.
All right. Moving right along. Magic Maker: How to Make Magic in Another World. All right. I've got some complicated thoughts on this one, but you want to start us off?
Okay. Ooh, close out of that. Ooh,
Well,
my bad on my
I'll tell you what,
everybody.
I'll start us off with the content warning, which is that if the concept of a 30-something-year-old being reincarnated into a child's body and the central romance of the show revolving around his relationship with his own kid's sister is uncomfortable to you, give this show a pass.
Other than that, yeah, this is another isekai, not direct power fantasy at the start. This does take on the more slow burn. It like when we were asking the complaining about a noble on the brink of ruin mastering magic, he figured like that show figures out magic turn episode one. By the end of this season, the main character still only has the what he considers a basic grasp of it. It's like he's only become a novice at that point. This does
Although,
take its.
I will point out, and this is spoilers, so apologies for folks, but in order to accurately dissect this show, it is important to understand that later on, they do, in fact, reveal that he has been lied to and magic has existed in this world all along, and he is the descendant of the only people that can use magic.
Only that's also not true since we see plenty of other regular humans use magic or gain magical
Including his
powers.
own childhood friend there that just picks it up and learns it with no relation, and his sister that also turns out to not be his sister, and
Not related by blood.
so yeah, they undermine their own premise and create a flurry of plot holes.
That being said, the way they do build onto the magic system without that core aspect of only this person should be able to use it, which is, I think that came up in the last episode of the season after they had already thoroughly debunked. It's like, oh yeah, there's also this single rule. No, there's not. We've just proven that dozens of times.
Yep.
Heck, even when they were going through other stuff, they kind of disproved it in other way. I don't.
Yeah.
That's like ignoring that fact, which could be explained later down the road because there
Until
is
they
enough
screwed
mystery.
it all up, it was a pretty cool attempt at building a magic system for a show of this quality.
Yeah. Oh, it's. I think. I feel like the reason they can do that, and remember the. I don't want to do too much spoilers, but the person who basically drops that normal humans shouldn't be able to use magic. kind of doesn't understand what the state of the world is in, and the people who know what a little bit of his backstory don't fully understand comprehend what magic is in itself either. So I think there might be a handful of misconceptions floating around to throw off the audience there. That's the only thing I'm going to give on that, because I have to dig into too much detail. Other than that, I was pleasantly surprised. I was expecting pure trash. It was very slow paced, but in a way I like to digest the world. Enough going on. It did throw some darker aspects early on that didn't quite stick around, but
I do have to make one note as an update to what I said about this show in the early season. I had mentioned that the first goblin they introduced was like really well done in that it felt like a legitimately terrifying creature, and that kind of stands for that introduction. But it again was undermined by like everything after that in the show, where the goblins quickly become just like jank cannon fodder, and they fight like much stronger creatures than that without them ever being presented as being scary. Um, so like I had high hopes for that element of the show, and they just never really followed through on it.
it reached a little higher than what it wanted to be, but at the same point, it was trying to be better than it was. So I do
Yeah,
want to fault
I
it
give it
too much on
credit for
that.
what it achieved there, but the fact that after that also all the enemies ended up being just like janky CG models for the most part didn't help either.
Yeah, that's about all I really have to say on that one without going into too many spoilers. What else did you have on that, Yuki?
That's pretty much it for me on that one, I think. I think we save this one for later.
There's a couple I can imagine. Where do you want to put the ranking on this one? Because this, I can see this in trash. I could also see this bumping into C or B.
I definitely don't think it's quite a B. It's somewhere trash or C tier. Um, it's I feel like it's not quite trashy enough to be trash, so I'd call it a C tier, I guess.
Yeah, I'm gonna put this
It just doesn't.
top
It
of
just doesn't
C
have
just because it does a lot of good
that
stuff.
trash aroma to it, you know.
Yeah, it feels like a isekai that wanted to be a higher concept that kind of failed in some executions.
That
All
seems pretty
right.
accurate. All right. Next up, we have Bogus Skill Fruit Master. This certainly is a show that happened. So okay, the main character has a infinite supply of fruit which he can keep growing that gives him special powers, and the ability to eat that fruit without dying, which no one else can do. And for some reason, only ever chooses to do this in an emergency when he's already under attack and him and his friends are in mortal peril. This is a show where it would make sense for the protagonist to just gorge himself on fruit and become all powerful, and he actively chooses not to do that for reasons that are completely not explained.
One thing I really want to point this out because
Yeah.
we have complained a bit about shows on their title being very blunt about what they are and then pulling the rug out from under you in a very bad and irritating way. This does the opposite somehow.
Yeah. Bafflingly.
It's
The protagonist
so I
also is objectively the worst character in the show, as evidenced by the fact that around episode 9, when he's completely cut out of the show entirely for like several episodes, and it focuses on the female lead and a female villain from earlier in the show teaming up, the show becomes significantly better.
yeah, it becomes from a schlock. Okay, this is not an isekai. This is a pure schlock trash fantasy with RPG elements. God,
Yeah,
I
you're
think they
gonna get
dropped
some
half
stat
the.
screens in this show.
I think they dropped half of them like halfway through because there was like two goddesses, the goddesses of skills and the goddess of like talents. Like I don't remember anybody ever bringing up talents later on.
Yeah, no, it never really became a thing in the show.
It's I'm not quite sure what was going on here.
It's
It's
definitely near the bottom of the trash barrel, though.
yeah, it's like it's better than Girl. It's better than Appraiser. Noble on the brink of ruin.
I mean,
That
like,
back half kind of saves it.
yeah, like the back half is better than that.
Okay, I'll put this just below A ranked party, just
Yeah, it's
because
definitely
that
not better than A rank party.
it's like it's mid that. Other than that, the token lolly with the appraisal skill likes pizza.
To a unhealthy degree.
And once again, I live in a town with 6 colleges. It's we had a new one open recently. Pizza's a staple in this town. Like um that came off as weird to me even.
Listen,
Um
for context, this girl is more obsessed with pizza than the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are, okay?
yeah, that's the biggest reason I wanted to pick that up. Okay, weird. Ready to roll the next one yet, Yuki?
Sure am. Next up is Anyway, I'm Falling in Love with You. So this is the show that, is has the distinction of being the first show I've seen to really reference the pandemic lockdowns, but makes the baffling decision to obfuscate that and refuse to refer to them by name in any way, shape, or form, and kind of act like they're this thing that will just sort of blow over that's happening in the background.
Side note, I finally was able to figure out where I heard that band from Promise Wizard from. Same band that does the opening for Goblin Slayer.
Ah, okay, that would track. You can see why
There's
that
very
might pique your interest.
no, there's a very like you are the visual, I can do audio insanely well most of the time. It feels like there is something with the way that vocalist does these light, almost like oh their voice hits a tone like they're pulling at the strings of like a acoustic guitar every so often. I don't know why that hits me so well. I really it does. But all right, back to this show. I didn't
Yes.
watch this. I didn't catch a
Agent.
single bit of this. Hey,
Hey,
Droxed.
Droxed.
Hey, how's it going? You're catching us. Right?
How
Good
goes
chunk
the
of the way
anime
through our
ranking?
season.
We're pretty well into it at this point. I think we're about 2/3 the way through.
There's a lot of garbage this season. A lot of garbage.
It is the season of trash.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
bounced off this show pretty hard too. Uh, I managed to watch the first episode. I could not possibly bring myself to watch more than that. The protagonist is awful. The pretty boy Bishonen love interests are like two-dimensional and vapid as far as I could tell. It makes no sense for this girl to like be surrounded by this hot of men, which I'm sure is part of the fantasy, but like I don't know. Like this show couldn't even sell itself on being like a romance at all. It was clearly just like a reverse harem deal, and I almost feel like there might have been a gacha game that had to do with this.
as far as I know, but yeah, no, I didn't even bother with this one. I was hoping you were going to do more, but it's like if it was that bad, I wasn't going to be able to stomach any of this then.
Yeah,
But
totally fair.
I totally ask you, did you have a favorite anime of of last season? Because we are going from the old rankings of winter. But as for Yuki, Skip, how far
Definitely a skip, yeah.
are we
Um,
throwing this at the
I
bottom
mean,
of
if
Skip,
you're a
or is this
really
above Wizard?
yeah, if you're a really ardent fan of this kind of reverse harem genre, if you're the kind of person that wanted to watch Promise of Wizard to see all the hot guys, maybe this is the show for you. But other than that, give it a pass.
Yeah. Ah. All right.
All right, next up is Sora Iro Utility. All right, content warning on this show. It does have some degree of fan service in it, which usually takes the form of a middle school girl bathing with, like, post
Oh,
high
I,
school girls um,
hmm.
that are
Thank you for the hydrate.
vaguely,
Sports anime.
but not technically love interests.
N- uh, it wants you to think it's a sports anime, but it's a more of a love show with.
It's Yuri bait.
Yeah,
It's Yuri bait with a golf skin.
it tried to draw you in with golf and then throw Yuri. I don't.
No, I'm pretty sure it tried to draw you in with Yuri and then said, "Hey, but golf."
I don't know.
I love a good sports anime.
I
It is, at its core, really a cute girls doing cute things show that
yeah.
happens to be sports for the cute thing.
Oh, a little piece of me thinks it would go into C. I I almost want to throw this in skip just because of how
I
meh.
managed to get through to the end of it. It it was not by any means the worst show this season. I could almost even give it a B tier on the animation quality, but the real,
AW Dan.
like, the reality is, if you don't want to watch cute girls doing cute things, you're not going to be interested in this show.
Tony, there are enough ongoing sports anime that are incredibly good. You don't need a no, okay, I was gonna say you don't need a golf one, but we really don't have a golf one. Like
There was one that popped up. I don't know if it's still going though.
yeah, that was like really over the top and crazy. That was less of a golf than it was a
It was like the Prince of Tennis of golf.
yeah, which golf's a little bit harder to do. So I can understand it. But
That one, or that one. Let's that one closer. That one. That one. Maybe it's kind of. Okay, sorry, I'm just kind of rearranging things because we're coming up towards the Adult Swim portion here.
yep, Tony, yeah, you are getting just in time to watch all of the extra. No, don't watch these at work. Shows.
All right.
But we
Yeah,
few
go ahead.
more to go before we hit there, I believe. What is
Sort
next on
of.
the docket?
We're kind of easing into it. Next up
We've got
is
a couple.
Momentary Lily.
Okay, let me before because I'm going to go off here in a second. I wanted to ask you two things. Did you watch this one?
I only watched the first episode. It was bad. It was definitely a skip for me.
This has the worst CGI of this season, which you is saying fucking something. The story is inconsistent to say the least. The characters are living I don't want to say tropes, but they are archetypes that are barely fleshed out. most of the show revolves around cute girls doing cute things and I don't want to say post-apocalyptic, but like last man on earth style things, and then switches to high octane battles on the flip of a hat, has their personalities switch as
I
it's
feel like there are a decent amount of anime that I don't
this
feel like I
show
learn a
does
whole lot about the show from the trailer.
I don't want to be just a
That's
dump
very
on it and say it
accurate.
does nothing right.
Sorry,
I
replying to
don't feel
chat.
like well, yeah. Yeah, it's that's why we tend to go over this, and that's why we also have the pre-show where we dig into your first 3 episodes. Momentary Lily is the worst show on this season for me. This is the oh, where
Oh,
are
I
you?
don't know.
Where
Are
are
you sure
you?
about that? We've got one that might be
Yes,
worse.
yes. I know the one you want lower. That one had plot. This one had things and character cutouts doing things with an abundance of horrible CGI in your face at all times.
I will also throw
With
out there that the characters themselves, while on top of being the only thing that's 2D animated really in the entire show, are, for some reason, incredibly over animated. Just like wasting money on animating parts of these characters at all times that do not need to be moving, and
no,
that are in fact moving more than they should for the physics to allow.
they're CGI. They're not 2D. Most of them are CGI in most of the scenes. Like I think there are scenes where they are hand drawn, but they are CGI most of the time.
Oh yeah, that's true. Like especially once they go into combat. But I mean, like we saw the scene there where like the girl runs up and slams into the sign. That was 2D hand drawn animation, at least as far as I could tell. But they made the questionable
Some
choice of just having like every aspect of her moving at all times.
Yep. We also like to do the trailers just because it gets to show off a bit of that animation because it can be hard to describe, and the thumbnails we can dig out for these shows vary in quality
Bad CGI is so
vastly.
rough to get through.
It really can be, yes, especially when it's omnipresent.
Oh, and it's the monsters in this show are it's this is the bottom of my skip. If Yuki could talk me into the other show being lower, I will go into that. But Momentary Lily, it's the studio's known for having outrageously bad CGI. It's I forget which one it's called, but they are
Gohans, I believe.
yeah, whatever the like they love chains. Whatever the one that does the bad CGI chains all the time is that studio. All
In
right,
any case, I will agree, it is very bad. Do not recommend. Hard
even the
pass.
fan service is bleh.
Yeah, no, even the fact that this was clearly like another Yuri bait title could not get me even remotely interested in this show.
Okay, I don't like ragging on things too long. Let's
Moving right along then, we have
yep.
Sakamoto Days. Alright.
All right, I think you can open up. Did you watch this one, correct, Yuki?
I didn't make it all the way through this one, but I did watch a pretty substantial portion of it. I would say this show to me, it's not that it's a bad show, it's definitely objectively a lot better than the majority of the shows this season. It just really failed to live up to the hype that it had surrounding it, and that was probably its biggest downfall in a sense. It could have been so much better than it was. Everyone was expecting it to be so much better than it was, and like I didn't even have knowledge of it going into it. I just saw all this buzz about it and was like, "Oh, okay, maybe this is actually supposed to be something really good." And then it was, it's okay. But the core issue it has, in my opinion, that really drags it down is the fact that it's trying to be a gag anime parody of a shonen battler, and in order for that to work, it has to sell on having that shonen battler quality to it. The reason something like One Punch Man worked so well is One Punch Man was not only a funny parody with good gags, but it was able to successfully subvert the
Follow on
genre
Blue
because
Sky
it
at
lived
agent
up to the level of
123.bsky.social
quality
and watch the
that
archives at
we expect from a high-end shonen anime.
https://www.youtube.com/at
Sakamoto
agent
didn't manage to
Q123.
pull that off. It just wasn't quite there on its visual fidelity to make it feel like it was on par with a top-tier shonen show.
I will say the last arc of the show had a lot of the budget dumped into it for a very big fight scene. But for anyone wondering, yes, this is John Wick, but happy ending. Um, that being said, I know they had to skip a early arc because it kind of involved terrorists blowing up Annie Kyoto for having one of their favorite shows canceled. Um, that kind of happened in real life, so
Oops.
yeah. So that got cut right away. A lot of the early stuff is slow pacing. It's character building. It's introducing people. It did not speed up a lot. On the other hand, that has kind of been a bit of the trend with the really hyped shonen coming off the shonen app, because this is not a physical one. This is one of the it was considered to be one of the big three coming from Shonen Plus, an online only app, the other two being Kaiju number 8 and Spy X Family, both of which hit much harder in their opening seasons.
Yeah, for
This
sure.
this is slow building. Its back half really does feel a lot better, I would say, than its opening. But that's coming from the characters bouncing off the titular Sakamoto. He kind of is the he kind of has the Goku problem in this show to start with. Of He's kind of the big character that kind of shows up and solves the problem at the end if there is a big bad. If not, he's kind of just chilling, kind of being the big dopey father figure.
He's the Deus Ex Machina character of the show.
Yep, it is kind of fun seeing him in Fat Man form kind of dodge bullets and do a couple other things. They do have some fun with that. It's did that not get one of my big openings? No, oh yeah, no, it did not get one of my big openings.
I would say overall it's maybe high B.
It's high B.
Maybe low A quality, but probably not.
No, it just ekes out of being A on a couple technical problems. Its story was still only it's a lot. It knows it's a long format story, and it's taking its time fleshing out its characters. Which I will say, there was not a single character I disliked. Heck, even the big bad with his taxidermy deer head was a very interesting, and like he was a very fun character to see around with a lot of crazy concepts. Like I said, this is anime John Wick happy ending, and yeah, I do really like that. So hi B.
Fair enough. I think that is a fair assessment for the show. Alright, moving
Okay.
along. Pharmagia. Alright, well that's an awful lot of hype for that, isn't it?
All right, let me say one thing that I'll let Yuki go off. Some of you might have noticed in the trailer the CGI ant monsters looked a little weird. This is anime based off a game. They decided to rip the CGI models for the monsters directly from said game and use them in the anime. Yuki, go ahead now.
Yeah. So, uh, up front, the biggest core issue here is when you have a franchise you're trying to establish that is a monster collecting franchise at its core, e.g., Pokemon or Digimon or what have you.
I would say raising. This is, from what I understand the game, this is technically closer to like Rune Factory.
Or maybe Monster Rancher might be a better example, but nonetheless, at its core, it's still a collect monsters thing, even if you're raising them rather than battling them or whatever. You want the monsters to be appealing things that people would want to collect or
Or at least
have.
memorable.
Yeah. And so if what you have instead are ugly as sin monster designs that don't make any sense and have nothing cool about them and aren't cute, and then also decide to make them ugly CG that doesn't mesh with anything else on top of that, you have utterly failed in everything that brings someone into your genre.
Yeah, and okay, so you might have we mentioned we dropped the fairy tale name, and some of you might be noticed. Hey, that guy looks like Datsu. Hey, that guy looks like the guy from Eden Zero. Hey, that kind of looks like the guy from Brave Master. If you're old like me, um, yes, the designer of this reuses his character designs quite frequently and quite often in multiple series. He does. I don't necessarily have a problem with this since he does tend to retool the character personalities to fit the new show while keeping their base archetypes. These are just base archetypes with the base character designs with bad CGI monsters in a plot that's
Not
very
serviceable.
base video game and trope it's like I didn't finish this. I got about halfway through it and I was just like, yeah, then now this is gonna happen, now this is gonna happen, now this is gonna happen, now this is gonna happen. There there's just nothing to this. Okay. Now I like this happens to be ranked as my second worst show. I believe this is your worst show, Yuki.
I think in all conscience, I have to give this worst show, partly because of what I already mentioned, and partly because, by all rights, with the team that they had and the budget that they were given, this should have been at least a mid-tier show, if not knocking it out of the park for the audiences at least that are into that, art style and everything, and it
Or genre
absolutely didn't.
or the game or
Yes. It, it,
'cause,
it failed like at every level it possibly could have while having every possible advantage. Um I can
okay,
only
I
assume this was a very troubled production, where they, the creative designer was forced to do at the end of the day a lot of things that they didn't want to do, which made them really half-ass it. And then they were probably also given a lot of mandates about the property that they were using, and I can only imagine that's why we have the 3D CGI monster problem. Like, they probably, somewhere along the line, thought that putting the actual models from the game in would make it more marketable because it would be more representative of the game or something dumb like that.
yep. The only reason I want to put this above like Momentary Lily is I understood and could follow and liked the plot. It was very basic, and I just like it's like I knew what was happening, but I couldn't enjoy that. Momentary Lily, I couldn't enjoy the plot of it.
That's fair. On the other hand, momentarily, like, we knew it was going to be bad going into it. It
Yeah.
didn't add a layer of massive disappointment on top of that.
Yeah, with it having the
Momentary Lily
edge and
just is
that.
what it is, and it comes from a studio that does that exact thing. This came from a team that has top tier talent and was still something that we are comparing with Momentary Lily. So personally, I
Yeah.
dock it for promises undelivered.
Yeah. Okay. All right, we have one, maybe two more shows before we hit the Adult Swim section, I do believe.
You know, I'm gonna say we're actually headed gradually into the Adult Swim section at this point, because from here out, every show has contained at least some element of sex or other mature problematic themes. So,
Uh,
moving right
ye-
along, um, we will continue with The Red Ranger Becomes an Adventurer in Another World. Yeah, I don't know why they decided to just lift a whole scene out of the show for that, but it is the same trailer we had for the openings of the season.
um, okay, would you like to start before I go
Sure, why
me on
not?
this?
I mean, I know this is definitely one of your favorites. You're gonna want to delve into it pretty extensively. Uh, this show, from my perspective, it's got a relatively fresh, concept it's introducing. It's competently executed, and the protagonist actually gets laid flat out. And with someone that it makes sense for that to be happening with. Um, uh, I mean, it's not. If I'm being objective, I probably still put it somewhere around like a high B, but I certainly have no complaints about this show. It was entertaining and amusing from start to finish, and it's an enjoyable ride. As trashy as it can be at times, I definitely don't think it falls into the trash category. It's just a little too interesting and unique for that.
Yep. So, all right, me going on this because all right, if you wanted to just make anime for me, this is pretty close to that. I am a Power Rangers fan. I am a Sentai fan. I am an Isekai fan. And then taking some of the best concepts from all the tropes, melding them together, having the characters bounce off each other while avoiding almost all of the pitfalls they both genres can fall into while still going into celebration. The amount of small detail work for both isekai fans and Sentai fans is kind of outrageous. Like they knew what they were doing with this from start to finish, and I loved every aspect of that. The Red Ranger is he is a Power Ranger who has finished his storyline. He is the in-game protagonist, and he is dumped into this isekai world, which is that genre of isekai that's been gaining more momentum lately. Hey, what if we dumped a already powerful person, into said fantasy world? How do they deal with that person who doesn't revolve around any of their systems? And they take their time to explain that. They set up a vastly interesting world system that's also a monster of the week, even with generals, to the point where even the Red Ranger is like, oh, this is just like the evil enemy generals aren't learning his lesson. I did like this because while the Red Ranger is the main protagonist of this story, he is, like I said, a completed character. So a lot of the stuff that he learns are, oh, this is how this works in this world. Why some of the other characters, especially the main female lead, are kind of the ones that have their character progression. if I have one major complaint with it is the female lead is dressed like the skimpy sorceress from most fantasy anime, and or what was it's that video game genre. I don't that has like the four characters that you pick from, kind of gauntlet style. The one being the busty mage. It's like she is a rip on that. She is a rip on that character. I don't know what she
I
is.
think you're thinking of like Dragon's Crown,
Yeah,
the sorceress from
sounds
that.
yeah. She's a rip on Dragon's Crown sorceress. And that's kind of my biggest detraction from this.
I think that part is fine. Like, it doesn't really hurt anything in the context of this anime. Like, yeah, the fan service there isn't necessary, but it's not like detracting actively from her character either.
Not from her character, but the fact that her design sticks out so much in comparison with everyone else. The only time I really enjoyed it better is when they were in the desert and they do everyone's, oh, we're all gonna be wearing skimpy bikinis for a bit. It's like, all right, she blends in better, but you put her next to other mages, you put her like pictures of like luckily when she was a little girl, they didn't have her in the skimpy bikini, but it always stood out, and that's kind of the problem I have with recommending that. It's like so many people, it's like, oh, it's an isekai. Oh, there's the big boob love interest. Oh, and it's just their
Yeah, I
eyes
suppose
glaze
if your
over.
problem with it is how tropey it feels and unnecessary, I get that. But the fact that it makes the main character stand out is in some ways a strength because the main characters should stand out, right?
Yeah, I can under. It's like I said, it's my only like the only reason I even bring it up is that's my complaint about the show.
Hmm.
Everything else it does is so good. The fact that the Red Ranger is powered by friendship. Literally, that's
Literally,
like
yeah.
we are not making a figure of speech there. He is powered by friendship. They they even do the good thing of gradually introducing like a bit of his backstory and like why he is the way he is, and so many fun things. Hell, this series even has the classic, oh, we're in an isekai, so we're gonna pull up our stat screen. They pull up a Power Ranger as stat screen with him, and everyone's just kind of, what the fuck is with you? What? What?
Yeah, I think it turned out to actually be his exact entry from a magazine article about him.
Yeah, and it's fun. Okay. I'm throwing this up in A. Yuki, do you want to detract down to B or talk me down on
I,
that?
I would call it more of a high B, mainly because this show could have been elevated by having a bit more animation budget. I feel like they used what they had very judiciously, and it looked serviceable. But Sakuga, this is not. You are not going to get anything that is a visual treat show. You won't get much that is painful on the eyes, but you're not going to get anything that fills you with wonder either.
Okay, I can be talked down that far. But yes, is a great series overall. I hope we get a season 2 on this. This will definitely be on my future to watch list. But once
Oh
again,
yeah,
it's
for sure.
we I will also say the characters have development. You actually see the okay, I brought this up to a couple people. It's like, oh, it's a show. It's like this is a shonen Red Ranger, skull as thick as a brick, protagonist, and he gets laid.
He sure does.
Granted, it's the female love interest kind of realizing, oh wait, I love this fucking knucklehead. I'm
Well,
gonna act on this.
yeah, not only that, but like there was technically like an excuse around it too, where she was supposed to be like trying to learn more about how his powers worked, but let's be real, she was definitely DTF there. And to
Yeah,
that effect, the skimpiness of her outfit like certainly does help reinforce that she's kind of like a sexually liberated, empowered female character, which I think is fine.
I guess it's fine overall. It's just like I want to recommend this to more people, and just having her right out the front, it's like, oh, this is a more like ichi trash kind of show. It's like, no, they just
You feel
dressed
like
her
it gives
very
audiences the wrong impression of the show out the gate.
yeah, that's my biggest deterrent there. Like, I don't have a problem with that. It's like sorry. As much as I do with the rest of like the trash, all this stuff, it's there's no doing that. I'm pretty sure she was like 18 or at least very much older. It's like they do not like, oh no, she's a kid, or she's like, it's no, she is an adult. She is the head of her family. She runs a mansion. She is actively research. It's like she is a fully functional adult in this show in every aspect. And I think I've done enough gushing about it now.
All right. Well, with that, we will move on to Welcome to Japan, Miss Elf. All right. Did you end up catching much of this one, Agent?
No, unfortunately, this kind of fell through my cracks. By the time I was trying to get to this, I was not in a. This happened to be a little bit too emotionally heavy for me to handle at that point.
Interesting, interesting. I felt like most of the show wasn't, but there was definitely probably the most emotional scene of the season for me near the end of this anime. Um I don't want to spoil things there. But I do definitely have to give it credit for that, even if it felt like a tiny bit out of left field. Um Nonetheless, this was a weird show because it was a slice of life show combined with like a vaguely slice of life-ish isekai adventure. Um it had that kind of weakness you have with this kind of show where like it didn't really know where to draw the line between the two, and it kind of suffered from like a lack of focus a little bit. But at the same time, it was okay. It was fun to watch. It had a little bit of fan service here and there. It was cute. Um, I can't really call this anything more than like a high C, maybe a B. I wouldn't toss it straight into trash because it definitely does try to be something a little bit different than what we're seeing for the most part. Um, yeah, I'd say it was more fun to watch than the Magic Maker show for sure. Um, Animation wise, it was better than the Villainous show, but I would say Villainous, because of its writing and everything, was a higher quality of show than Welcome to Japan, Miss Elf. I don't think this is one that we'll be hearing about in future seasons, or that people will probably want to watch much outside of its genre. So high C is probably the right place for it objectively.
All right. I think with that, I think we can move on. Unfortunately, like I said, I did not catch too much of this.
Yeah.
Life was it was going to be on my late end of the season, and life hit me a little too hard at that point. So
Yeah, you definitely had a lot going on this season.
yes, I did. The fact that I got as much done as I did kind of made me happy.
Well done. Good job. Uh, Next up we have I Want to Escape from Princess Lessons. Um, you know what? Before we even start the preview on this one, I'm gonna give the content warning of kidnapping, sexual assault. I mean, there's nothing consensual happening in this show.
Yeah, the stuff we got coming down the pipeline, there is this isn't even the bottom of that barrel.
No,
But
it's not. I mean,
all
this
right.
is far less graphic than most of what we're going to see going forward from here. But the type of content it has is very uncomfortable in a lot of ways, even just watching it, and could be very triggering depending on our audience members. So
Yeah.
please be warned. All right, I wasn't able to bring myself to finish this show, but from what I did see, unless you have a very specific type of non-con ink, and great for you if you do, this show is probably not going to be for you.
Okay, was it just me or did the animation quality in this show fluctuate like crazy?
Yeah, it did.
And I
With
I don't
most
normally
of the
pick up
show
on
looking
animation.
not great, and other scenes being like weirdly well animated.
No, yeah, this was one that
I
you
can't even
thought it
put
was
it in
gonna.
trash personally. I have to give this one a
Yeah,
skip.
it's not the bottom, but it's yeah, flowers of Azure. It just feels uncomfortable. You think it's going to be a standard, oh, princess learns to be independent, learns to speak her mind. No, it's a stalker show. It's a medieval stalker. I
And
mm,
also, everyone is on the stalker's side because it's a medieval society and he's the prince, so whatever he wants is just okay. Um,
yeah.
no support or compassion whatsoever from her family members, which itself feels weird and uncomfortable because they're clearly acting only in their own interests. And, like, the reality I feel is even if you were actually in that era and you had a daughter that you had to, give to the prince because they're the prince and you have no choice in the matter, that doesn't preclude you from having empathy for your daughter. Like, even just a simple, like, yeah, this really sucks, but it's something we all have to deal with. I had to do it too, and we just have no control over it, would be far better than, no, get back in there with that prince. Our livelihoods depend on it.
Yeah, that's definitely a skip from the season. All right. So go the further we go forward here, the raunchier these are gonna get here. So just be warned, everybody.
Yep, and I'll let you do the content warning for this one, Agent, because now we're on that Banbaban vampire show.
All right, if you have anything about underage grooming from older men in a very, very, very sexual manner, be warned.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you didn't catch any of this, right, Yuki?
Yeah, no, I didn't watch any of this one.
Yeah, I got a little bit further, dropped it, went back, skimmed through the last little bits. It's all right, so it's about an ancient feudal Japanese vampire getting saved by a small 5-year-old boy and then dedicating the next 13 years of his life to raise that boy to be true and proper and be a virgin. It's very important that he's a virgin. So when he turns 18, he can drink his blood, presumably dry.
Presumably.
And the reason why he's waiting to 18 is because to him, this is a very, very, very sexual act to the point where they decide to show off him sitting on his bed naked, thrusting wildly into the air, imagining what he'll do to this kid. I I don't know how to describe it further than that. It's shenanigans from there and very yaoi baiting old ancient vampire raising a boy to devour. But he's a good vampire. He only eats criminals other than the boy
This
he's
tasty treat that he's specifically like veal raising to consume.
yep. The only other bull. Okay, so technically, I believe this vampire is well known in Japanese mythology, not as a vampire, but as a Nobunaga's aide.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, because he loves to bring up the facts that the one master he loved to serve was Nobunaga, and the day he died and he drank all of his blood was one not only the best meal he ever had, but also one of the saddest moments of his life.
Hmm.
It's it wants to be a modern yaoi with a old school male samurai fellowship feel to it while being a grooming. Okay, I've had enough of explaining this mess. Would you like to put this below or above? I want to escape from princess lessons.
You know, I'm gonna leave that up to you because I watched 0% of that show. Um,
You know, I think I have to put it above it just because of the animation quality, which is consistent and okay.
fair enough. I could also
Um,
accept the argument that although its premise is, a particular way, it may not be as constantly in your face about it as Princess Lessons is.
oh no, the naked thrusting and longing for the underage child is a constant theme of the show.
Ah, okay. Well, it does not have that going for it then, I suppose.
Yeah, no, it's like that is a one of those like oh, I guess he's not always naked. They do like to show him off in his shorts with a very unconspicuous bulge point poking out of it as he berates horribly about the boy.
Oh boy.
Oh, yeah, this honestly is like is in the adult swim section is the show with no sex in it. I think this might be one of the most sexual shows of this season.
Ow. Okay. Well,
No, no, take that back. The one the there the we'll get to it later. There is
yeah,
one that
we're
does it
getting
better.
there.
All right, what do we got next?
Next up is I'm Living with an Otaku Neat Kunoichi. End up catching any of this, Agent?
I watched the first couple episodes, then skimmed some the rest of it pretty much.
Alright. Do you want to give your initial impressions and then I'll flesh it out, or?
This felt very it's not an isekai, it's not a premise we see too often realistically, but this kind of felt like the almost wanting to be a shonen with
It definitely suffered from some serious identity crisis. There's actually an
yeah.
episode that's literally called something like, uh, wait, we're a shonen battle air now? It's that kind of show.
I remember that they have both like in a 12 episode season, they have both a beach episode and a sauna episode. And
So, although it's listed as 12 episodes, it's technically 24 because each episode is two half-length episodes.
yeah, they do that double core thing that was common for Cartoon Network back in the day. I I don't like this show. I did not like it. Go ahead though, Yuki. Go delve deeper.
Yeah, so, um, I dug into a lot already in the preseason show, how they have a character that could be seen as very insensitive to the trans community. That remains a problem. I won't go into great detail on that again because we've already that pretty significantly. But additionally to that, it does have that identity crisis thing going for it. It wants to be a gag anime. It wants to be an ecchi anime, but it's not particularly funny, and it's not particularly sexy for the most part. And then, content warning again, they of course have like the token lolly character that also gets fan serviced. And I don't know. The show is just like, it's pretty eh. I would definitely say it's trash category. It's thoroughly junk food, but it's not especially good junk food.
I don't even know if I want to put this in trash. This was.
I mean, I was able to get all the way through it. It wasn't bad enough for it to be a hard skip to me. There's definitely an audience for this kind of thing. Probably where you have it right now is about the right place for it, though.
Yeah, it's I did not like a single character in the show. It's like there was nobody I could get. Like, even skimming through it later on, I don't even remember seeing like who the guy who was supposed to be like the protagonist, like the main character of the series anymore. It's like I think he felt like he disappeared like halfway through the season.
Oh yeah, no, he's not actually the main character. The Kunoichi is the main character.
Yeah,
he's an ancillary supporting character.
I don't know. I can leave it there. We can leave it at the bottom of trash just because ninja, I guess.
It is what it is. Next up is the elf girl's cat is secretly an S-ranked monster, aka Bihi Neko, that we touched on earlier but decided to save for now. Alright. This series is very, very hard to defend on paper, but it was also one of the more entertaining shows of the season, if I'm being very honest.
It has fun plot, it has fun characters. Yes, all the three. I'm gonna say three because the dryad and the spirit are kind of side characters realistically. All three main female leads really want to fuck that cat.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, the other two kind of do too. They're not completely excluded
they
from
kind of
that.
do, but the big titted elf girl is not only wants to fuck it, but that's her fetish. Okay, the cat girl is the least aggressive and gets the most pass for being a cat girl as well, which
especially because they kind of note that it's entirely plausible that the way cat girls exist in this universe to begin with is via interbreeding with these magical cats that they think he is.
And the other reincarnated dragon girl who is definitely the most aggressive on wanting to be, I don't even say fucked, is like she wants to be bred.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
It's very open about that and aggressive, and it's...
She wants to have as many of the cat's babies as possible, as quickly as possible.
And this is the gag that portrays out throughout the whole series that they keep bringing up. And yeah, it is probably one of the most consistent worlds, one of the most consistent bits of storytelling. If you can get over how weirdly horny the whole world is.
I do want to touch again too on something from the preseason. I won't go into nearly as much detail about it this time, but the way that they subverted the trope of like the stereotypical like macho uh gay male slash like drag queen character and made their presence be not only like totally socially acceptable but also like them be a well-respected character in the world still carries a lot of value to me with this show. I
No,
really didn't
it's
expect that from a title like this.
no, it's like I said, it's weirdly hornily wholesome in some aspects.
It is like no,
Uh,
it's like um very consensual kink oriented as opposed to like the princess lessons thing being on like the far opposite end of that spectrum.
yeah, it's like I said, if you could get over that, okay, funny enough, the one complaint I always had is, God damn, the animation team just could not do nipples right in this show. It felt like,
Yeah, that is kind of a, a sore point for this show. They just like I think they kind of expected that it was going to get censored originally, and maybe it even was in Japan. So I don't think they put very much effort into the detail there, uh, which is kind of a shame because they clearly did for the rest of the breasts. Um, but I think we might have gotten to see more than we were originally intended to there.
yeah, which is saying something. But oh, okay, before we get too into this, top of the trash.
It feels like a relatively appropriate place for it. Uh, I have a really hard time defending putting it up on like B or something like that, even though it kind of feels like a B to me in terms of like how entertaining it was. But I feel like this is a little bit niche in that like there's a lot of audiences that'll be alienated by this show. The ones who
Oh,
like
don't
it
get me
will really
wrong.
like
This,
it, but the ones who don't will not touch this with a 40-foot pole.
yeah, and it's gonna be weird because the people who won't touch it, or the people who like it, will like it for the not the reasons everybody suspects. But
Exactly. And will
yeah,
probably take a lot of flack from the people who don't like it and haven't watched it.
it's completely understandable. You don't want to watch it though. There is a lot of weird aspects in this show. Just none of them awful as, yeah, I don't know. There's a little too much to dance around to do in this our type in our uh Twitch show here for anime.
Yeah. I will
Um
say that some of these concepts have come up before in other anime, in terms of like some of these kind of more uncomfortable aspects, and they were way more uncomfortable in their implementation in those series than I've seen them be in this one.
yep, but all right, I believe we only have one show left.
That is correct. Our last show of the evening is The Daily Life of a Middle-Aged Online Shopper in Another World.
All right, this is on the content warning because this guy gets laid more than anybody I think I've seen in an anime and most hentai.
Now that said, most of that does happen off screen as like a cutaway. They fade to black before any of the real action, generally speaking. There's still some fan service in terms of like bathing scenes and stuff. Um, Other portion of
Yeah,
that content warning, uh, although he does not technically lewd the lolly definitely wants him to lewd her. As does the second lolly, who he canonically for sure at least used sex toys on a maid in front of, if not also banged the maid.
and her instruction. I don't even want to approach anything that's going on in that side of that. Other than that very interesting
Follow on
content
Blue
warnings.
Sky at agent
Oh, uh,
123.bsky.social and
this
watch the
is
archives at
a isekai where the protagonist's only power is, like I said at the start in the trailer,
agent
Amazon Prime.
Q123.
He can sell and buy stuff off his online app. I guess up to certain levels. He can't buy anything. This would be stuff that would be on Amazon Prime. And overall, it's a very interesting story. It is the slow, kind of laid back life bit. Um,
Disclaimer: we are not sponsored by Amazon Prime.
I would sell out though. You hear me, Amazon? I will sell out. You can take over a second. I actually want to see if I can check
Sure,
something
sure.
really quick.
So, animation quality wise, this is relatively bottom of the barrel. Don't expect anything pretty here. You're lucky if the character model or the characters are on model in most of the scenes. It's it's definitely like a utilitarian level animation budget. Weird choices also with like the cat girls who are really supposed to be like furries, and like the guys are furries, but the cat girls aren't completely for some bizarre reason. But they're furrier than most cat girls are. And then there's
They
also
are
this
a
like casual
solid
racism
2.
against them. Sorry, what was that?
I was gonna say the cat girls are a solid 2, leaning into a 3 on the free scale.
Yeah. You know, it's there's so again, this is one of those series like Biki Neko where like there's so many things that you could harp on about this series, and yet it somehow managed to be one of the more entertaining rides of the season. Like on paper, this thing looks like an awful trash heap, but it's an awful trash heap that's really fun to watch burn.
Yep, it does a lot of its stuff right. Its dialogue and characters are all likable. The like I said, the world building is also nice.
Yeah, the
This
world building
show
was surprisingly good in this show.
Yep, this show does a lot of good things, and without the protagonist being overpowered or having ungodly skills or being able to do a bunch of crazy stuff, they have to explain how he can do things, and that really does help. And also, the thing I was looking up, you cannot buy a backhoe off Amazon, at least in the United States, which he does buy, but
More than one of them, technically. But he also isn't, strictly speaking, using Amazon. So they get a little
yeah,
leeway in deciding what's available in their online store, I guess. Yeah,
this is trash. This is trash. The only question is, headhunted to another world, is it below or above that?
I would I would argue that in terms of like overall fun I had with it, it's above that. Like Headhunted to Another World probably has the superior concept in theory, but this one had a better execution on the concept that it brought to the table.
Yep, I'll definitely go with that on there. I can see that because I I always had a fun, happy time with this. Headhunted, sometimes I was slow and I was like, all right, skip ahead. Did I miss anything? Nope. All right, skip ahead a little bit more. All right, no, missed something. All right, go back. All right, now we'll start again.
Yeah, every episode was at least amusing, even if only in a like, haha, I can't believe they went there and did that kind of way.
Yep. Fortunately, the last thumbnail I have is one that we didn't actually need to cover. This is reusing it because tierlist.com sometimes likes to be a little twitchy and uncooperative with us. But this will be our final rankings of this season. Anything you can think to move you'd like to move around, or
Not really. And, like, I think it speaks a lot to the season that we had this time around, how many things we have in, like, skip down there, and how very, very light we are up in the higher tiers. In fact, even the C tier is shockingly light this time around, but that's partly because more than usual amounts of things fell solidly into the trash category.
Yeah, no defenses for a lot of these. These were just all junk food or garbage. And not too much rising above. Zensu so close to an S, so close.
But didn't
And a
quite
couple
make
of
it.
yep, a nice finished story like that. That do not do anymore with that. Leave it. The rest of these, I think most of C or most of B, I'm kind of looking forward to a season 2. And nothing really in C I really want to catch up on. And most of this trash, I'm not going to bother ever looking up again. Even if no, who's going to be fair? I'm going to remember our top 3 from trash probably, maybe 4, maybe 4.
I would
But
probably be there for uh an Elf season 2 personally. That one it was a fun enough ride that I would continue watching it.
yep, I will have to look into that. But all right, everybody, we are actually a little shorter than normal this time. I think it was just because we wanted to get through the garbage. Yuki, final rankings on this season at all, or anything you would like to say on it? Because I am thoroughly.
I mean, it's we called it earlier, right? It's the season of trash. Um,
For
there's
those watching on YouTube, there's a reason the thumbnail is as it is.
yeah. Um, we'll also say that this was not the largest season that we've had recently. We're looking at like 31 series here, which is definitely a step down from some of the like 40 plus series seasons we've had recently. Um, which gives us a little less to work with, but also might be part of why we got through this a little bit quicker. Um, Special note
What's that?
would be that solo leveling has definitely proved a lot more entertaining in season 2 than it did in season 1, since that was brought up earlier. Um, I still don't think it's necessarily actually a top quality show, despite the incredible ratings it's getting, but it is very consistently delivering a fire hose of Sakuga, and that goes a
Yeah,
long way for people.
yeah. We actually have one of the big awaited Mawa adaptations coming out next season.
I see, I see.
So we will see on that how more further those hold up. But yep, season of trash, mostly this. As for ending our night, do you have anyone you would like to raid out to? Because most of my people are kind of out, and the ones that aren't playing things that are good for raiding into after an anime only stream.
Let me see who I've got.
We are good to just
I
call it if
guess
there is a good
I don't know what
option.
this Schedule 1 game everyone's playing is. Um, yeah, we can probably just go ahead and call it rather than reading it. Probably fine.
Okay,
I will note that you mentioned that you may not be available for the next few weeks. So for folks who would normally be joining us for our Sunday collabs, those will be unfortunately postponed for the next few weeks. And probably once you're available again and back, we'll go ahead and run our start of season anime.
Yeah, that might be getting moved to Sundays just for other scheduling reasons, and then coming back might be a better idea too. If that is okay, better with you, Yuki.
Totally fine with me. We'll work it out in post, but just wanted to give
Yep.
everyone out there in the audience a heads up.
Yep. No, I will pretty much be going on complete hiatus for the rest of this week, and partial hiatus for the couple following weeks. So I unfortunately will not be around too much. Yuki, I believe you will still be doing your normal scheduling.
I'm sure I'll probably fill at least some of those slots or some adjacent slots with some streams of my own. But there's a possibility I may, move the schedule around a little bit, or maybe even cancel a couple of those myself, depending on just how busy I am.
Okay, with that, the final rankings will be posted to Discords and social medias. So follow us when you can, and we hope to see you around again.
Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Hope to see you all again next time. Bye.
All right, bye.
That's all for this episode. If you enjoyed, please like, comment, subscribe, or join me on Twitch or Twitter. Hope to see you next time on Yukikaze Gaming. Bye.